I'm joined by Jim Geraghty, the indispensable. You read Jim in the Washington Post, you read him in the National Review. You should be getting the Morning Jolt every day, and I hope to make him a weekly guest on the Hugh Hewitt Show. I'm falling into hostage talk because of the 20. Good morning, Geraghty, the indispensable. What do you hear? Are you as optimistic as Jim Banks that some of the 20 are going to get let off the island by Chip Roy this morning at noon?
I think it would be good to see that happen. You recognize that to get to 218, he needs all of them except four, and it sounds like at least five of them, the Gates, the Boberts, the usual, that they're the diehards of the diehards, and that they're not interested. Look, I think it's safe to say that that core group has an appetite for conflict for the sake of conflict. Their brand is chaos. So could Chip Roy bring over a bunch? Yes, I think that's the likely beginning of the end of this. Although nobody knows exactly when it's going to happen. But I still think I don't know if that gets him to 218, and that's this is a rather infuriating spectacle. I don't think it speaks terribly well of Kevin McCarthy that his attitude has been, well, I'll just wait. We're going to keep doing this until you guys quit. Because the attitude of the 20 is, we're going to keep doing this till you quit, and it's like watching a game of chicken where they keep crashing into each other and then lining up to do it all over again.
Okay, here's Jim Banks this morning on Fox and Friends. Play the second cut of Jim Banks.
Well, we're going to have another vote at noon, and I think you're going to see some progress. I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. So if that happens, hopefully that progress snowballs, and members who are holding out feel pressure in their districts or from others to unify with the party and do the right thing and elect a speaker so that we can work on the issues that matters. I think at noon,
I stop there and go to cut number 4.
At noon that we're going to elect a speaker, but I do last night, Chip Roy, a number of others engaging in serious conversations with Kevin McCarthy and others about what it would take to bring them back to the table. And as I understand it from Chip Roy and that group, that there was progress made, that those concessions that they were looking for are being made on the motion to vacate from 5 back to 1, where it's historically been, on giving some of the more conservative members of the table seats on the powerful Rules Committee, which I'm
all right, Joe. Jim Geraghty, that was the secret, right? Yesterday they were talking about adding 3 members to the steering committee, but now they're adding members to the Rules Committee. And the same mutineers will take the win and grow in esteem. Like Chip Roy is pretty widely admired anyway. The people who stay in the mutiny, they're just going to be dumb as bricks.
Likely. I think that's accurate. I do also wonder, does making these concessions make running the House even more difficult when you already know this is going to be a difficult task because of the narrowness of the Republican majority? Does McCarthy get the short-term win and a long-term, I don't know if I want to say defeat or loss, but a long-term headache of, does putting these folks on the Rules Committee make it harder to, you end up having a lot more amendments on bills? Do they try to block things that they don't like? There is, an element of the metaphor of negotiating with terrorists and rewarding them. The likes of Dan Crenshaw seem pretty irritated by this, of like, hey, I've been a loyal guy, I've done what I'm supposed to do, and nobody's making any big concessions to me. There's no
I know the 200 are going to have to be grown-ups. But here's the deal. I think, Jim, what's going to work out here is that McCarthy, with the gavel, immediately begins to raise a mountain of money. A mountain of money, because speakers have the ability to deliver things that other people don't. And that mountain of money grows, and meanwhile, Selena Zito this morning wrote a piece about, who's the guy from Pennsylvania?
Perry?
Yeah, Scott Perry. He won by 8 points, right? Comfortable. It's fallen apart for him in his district. There are some damning quotes in there. Those mutineers, I just think that once you're in the majority and Jordan's at the border and Gallagher's got the China committee, they're going to come to a debt limit issue in a few months. That will be a difficult one, but it changes immediately once you get the gavel. Doesn't it really? I mean, trouble enough for the day. I don't worry about tomorrow. First things first.
Ordinarily I'd say you're right, Hugh, but I kind of wonder about the values and kind of the incentive structure of the Gateses and Boberts and the most hardcore of that group. It doesn't surprise me that Selena Zito talks to people in the district and there are a bunch of folks who are like, is this really getting us what we want? Is this really getting, like, we can't do anything until we have a speaker. We can't pass any rules, can't pass any bills, can't hold any oversight hearings. Nothing can get done until this gets resolved. And the more you're fighting with each other, the more you're the Democrats are just sitting back and eating popcorn and being amused by all this. What are we getting out of this? So it doesn't surprise me. But on the other hand, the next time those voters are going to weigh in on Scott Perry and these other characters, it's going to be nearly 2 years from now. And my guess is between now and November 2024, there'll be a lot of other things on voters' minds between then. So Boebert, won by the skin of her teeth. I don't know if Matt Gaetz fears a primary challenge right now.
Matt Gaetz has no future because of his problems, because of his past.
Okay, I guess the question is, how does he define his future? I guess.
Last night I raised with Brett Baer, and we talked about, Brett was on this morning. Some of these people they want to be Trey Gowdy or Jason Chaffetz. They want a way out to a profitable podcast or a sinecure on a television, and this is exactly the opposite way to go. Unless you want to be Alex Jones' co-host, right?
Yeah,
and maybe they do.
You sure a Newsmax type wouldn't do?
No, they will not touch these people.
Okay.
I'm a veteran of conservative, and there are lines that you cannot. You can do podcasting, right? But the sort of hard right, the very hard right area on the podcast world is already occupied. And people like this, like Victoria Spartz was I think that's her first name. She was a pretty winsome presence on the radio. She bolted Kevin because she wanted to get around on the right flank of Jim Banks for a long shot run at Senate. That's over. I mean, I think some consultants are just genuinely stupid, Jim. You know some of them. And they come up with really stupid advice for their members.
It could be the consultants, Hugh. It also could be the members themselves.
Well, with Matt Gaetz it is.
Yeah.
And Bob Good it is. There are two I know will never come off the island, Gaetz and Good. Boebert is going to figure out, I actually read yesterday, I heard from a former staffer for another Colorado congressman who has had it with her, and the very conservative Colorado congressperson. And they simply have had it with Boebert. I think she's done. And she thought this was a way to, rally the troops. It's exactly the wrong thing to have done. And if she wants to stay in Congress, she has to put her nose down and do everything she can to help her colleagues.
I think you're right, Hugh. I hope you're right. I'm not 100% certain that you're right. So I do. Today's Morning Jolt, I do something almost unprecedented. I quote Molly Jong Fast, Vanity Fair, right? And she makes the observation that, even though Trump is on the side of McCarthy, that this is the ultimate outgrowth of Trump. And seeing Trump come on, be very vocal in support of McCarthy. He, issues a very forthright, clear statement, and not a single vote changes. And in fact, Gaetz kind of tweaks him a little bit, putting on Twitter saying "sad." There is kind of this element of Frankenstein's monster, right? The idea that all of these folks who are from very conservative, very safe, very Trumpy districts, with the exception of Boebert, who nearly lost her seat this past cycle, that basically they're like, hey, you know what? It's the Tom Hanks movie about the Somali pirates. Look at me, I am the captain now. Right? They believe they're in charge.
They do. But last night, one of the 20, good source, lost a fundraiser, meaning a fundraiser was canceled last night by an angry donor who would organize people and invite them to a venue to raise money for one of the 20. You know what? That gets heard in a hurry among the 20. Because these people need money and attention, and they're not going to get any attention. You're not going to see Matt Gaetz on Fox News. He's going to be in Alex Jones land. And if he wants to live there, fine. He could be there forever. But let me run down. I need to ask you a question. The base. People keep saying the base is with the 20. So I said, let's get a definition. And I want to try a definition off on you, Geraghty the Indispensable. You must have voted for Republicans 5 elections in a row and at least show some activity that demonstrates something beyond voting, a donation of $10, a walked precinct, phone calling, something like that. That's the base. The base is not nuttery. The base is actually regular Republicans. That's the base, Jim Geraghty. I don't think the base is with these 20. What do you think of my definition, and what do you think of my calculation?
I think that's an entirely reasonable definition. I do wonder on it, district to district, and I have a bone to pick. I don't, my assessment of Molly Jong-Fast's piece is not a wholehearted endorsement, where she basically says the Republican Party isn't a governing party anymore. That it is now a assembly line for right-wing celebrities, and it's not the whole party. But I think it's now a chunk of the party, and that that chunk of the party is now getting disruptive to the rest of the party, right? The Barrassos, the Langfords, the senators who are there to get stuff done. Right?
Not surprisingly, I didn't read her piece. Did she note that beginning in the morning with Hugh Hewitt, through Dana Loesch in the midday, through Mark Levin in the early evening, through Sean Hannity at night, everyone is with the 200, not the 20? Did she note that?
Agree. Okay, I agree with that assessment, and I don't think that was in there. So one of my points is that it's a chunk of the party. It's a plurality. It's a loud plurality, but I don't think it's a majority of the party. But I think it's now as we can see in this, when you only have 222 House Republicans, even having 5 maniacs can really ruin your day.
And when you've monetized eccentricity, you've given them an incentive to be that way.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, mainstream media loves to cover the nut jobs.
Yes.
Hear more about, so in other words, the entire incentive structure is to encourage you to be the biggest nut job you can. And the nut jobs are only all too happy to get that attention because, as much as somebody made this a very good point in the context of Alex Jones. People would have Alex Jones, and Alex Jones would say, the chemicals are turning the frogs gay. And they would say, no, we should not be judging the frogs based on their lifestyle. This is entirely their whatever. People would think they're refuting Alex Jones, but by putting Alex Jones on CNN or whatever major platform he's on, 1% of that audience that would never have encountered Alex Jones is like, wow, finally somebody's telling
talking about the frogs
being gay.
You're right. But I do believe that the monetization was badly damaged for the 20, badly damaged, broken. And when they stood up against Trump and scorned him, Matt Gaetz put himself, he's going to be on the island forever. Man without a country, rowing between the boats. He might be invulnerable because his district is dumb as a dough-nail or it's overwhelmingly red and they just don't pay attention. But my goodness. Geraghty is followed at Jim Geraghty on Twitter. Go to National Review, sign up for the Morning Jolt, read him in the Washington Post. See him here each week.